Welcome to the Play Podcast with me, Douglas Schatz. Hello, and welcome to episode 99 of the Play Podcast, where we explore the greatest new and classic plays. I'm Douglas Schatz, founder and host of the Play Podcast. The curtain rises on the living room of a modest house on a hot summer's day in what was once the heart of coal mining country in Nottinghamshire. There is a flurry of activity because three sisters have come together to get ready for the big day of the wedding of the youngest sister, Sylvia. The scene is loud with the noise of hair dryers and overlapping chatter. It fizzes with a kind of collective hysteria, the mix of nerves and joyous anticipation traditional for the occasion. What isn't traditional in Sylvia's wedding is that, unlike her older sisters, her husband-to-be is not a local man. Marek is a Polish immigrant. As the family celebrate their union, fueled by beer and vodka, of course, emotions run high, and fault lines appear in this family that will change their lives forever. This is Beth Steele's hilarious and heartbreaking state-of-the-nation play, Till the Stars Come Down, which premiered at the National Theatre in January 2024 to great acclaim from critics and audiences alike, and as we record this episode, is back on stage at the Royal Haymarket Theatre in London's West End. I say State of the Nation, not to overload the play with such intent, but to reflect how the rifts in this one family echo the divisions and scars of the country at large, most specifically in the devastating existential change in the fortunes of this deindustrialized region. Having said that, this is primarily a universal family drama, showcasing how we are bound together by blood and history, wrestling with our individual and collective desires and disappointments. I'm delighted to be joined today by the play's author, Beth Steele. Beth's previous plays include Ditch, Wonderland, her moving portrait of the British miners' strike as seen from those in the pit and up top, which was staged at the Hampstead Theatre in 2014, followed by Labyrinth at the same theatre and The House of Shades at the Almeida in 2022. Welcome to the Play Podcast, Beth. Thanks so much for joining me.
Oh, thank you very much. Delighted to be here.
I'd like to start with where the origin of the idea for the play came from. I assume that it started with the setting of the wedding.
It did. And actually, for years, I'd had somewhere in the back of my mind that a wedding would be a beautiful thing to see on stage, that there's such a ceremony, occasion, ritual, tradition, high octane, family forced to be together, emotion, stakes. I'd actually seen The Deer Hunter, the 1970s film.
Oh, yeah.
Years ago, and fell in love with that first, I think it's like half-hour opening, where you literally are just thrown into this Georgian Orthodox wedding in Pennsylvania, and you're just in the swirl of it. And from then, I had it in my mind. And then once I'd written The House of Shades, which was my previous play, which was also a family drama and also set where I'm from, I knew that I wanted to continue. I wanted to write another family play. And actually, The House of Shades, though it ends in the present tense, it's a very backward-looking play. It spans 50 years of British history. And I was really ready and excited to embrace something that was completely contemporary and, if you like, forward-facing. And that is a wedding. I mean, it isn't about today, it's about tomorrow, honey. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So many plays are funerals and wakes, and I get it. But I just thought, God, yeah, I fell in love with the idea of the wedding.
Yeah, Reading's very rich soil for family drama, certainly. And this feels like a particularly British wedding, though I suppose much of what we do on such a day is, in fact, universal as well. It's definitely, as you said, a cauldron of heightened emotion.
Yeah, I hadn't anticipated was just how much the fact that it is a universal event that actually crosses cultures. We do it slightly different to a wedding in Japan, but actually most weddings have the father of the bride speech. What that does is therefore connect the audience to the story in a completely different way. They feel a sense of the anticipation And they also understand when you're interrupting ritual, when things are going wrong,
Yes.
because they know what's coming.
Well, I loved all the little details that made it British, like, pints on the table and sausage rolls or pub garden and all that kind of thing.
Well, a particular part of Britain, I don't know that I've been to that many weddings in London where there's pints of bitter and lager.
No, I suppose this day and age they jet to Tuscany, don't they? Some people. But I think what was interesting, actually, in mentioning the Deer Hunter, it's set in Steel Town.
It is, yeah.
In Pennsylvania, isn't it? So a not dissimilar kind of social milieu than the mining country, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Set in a working class town. Well, obviously, they're in the height of industry. And of course, mine is in a place of a dead industry, except for the arrival of the warehouse.
Yeah. I was thinking with the wedding, what you're saying is true. Universally, it brings families together, but also in a high octane, intense kind of situation, isn't it? It's very emotional by definition. I mean, love and romance. But I think that extends beyond that. It's not just about love and romance. It's about family who come together and may not have been together that often.
Yeah.
Friends, money, potentially social standing. All these things are stirred up. And also, it becomes an occasion, I think, where we reflect on our lives. It's one of those milestones in life. So we all start thinking about our past and about our future.
Absolutely.
And about those we love or may not love anymore or who don't get along with.
Yeah.
And also then you put in lots and lots of drink and who knows what can happen, right? People will start expressing these feelings that they're feeling very intensely.
Well, in a way, what you've said describes sort of also the texture of the play, which is to say there's quite a lot of chaos and interruption and stumbling in and out. And then there's pockets of breath. There's scenes where it is more reflective and maybe even philosophical. And it's sort of balancing the two. The beautiful thing about setting it in the staging that Bijan Shibani did in the round is that you also don't know when those scenes are coming. It isn't two people walking on, two people walking off. Lights up, lights down. It's a sort of almost like a pinball machine. They're like atoms colliding.
Yeah. And I love that idea because weddings go on a while, right? So you have these ups and downs through a day and you can have some quiet moments where you're sitting in a corner table and having a nice chat. And the next thing you know, you're just popping up and down on the dance floor or whatever.
Yeah.
Then the collisions of who you run into.
Well, I loved the idea of the day thing, as you said. I've never written in the form of, well, as you're supposed to as a playwright, Aristotle's 24 hours. And I've never done that. I can tell you it's incredibly hard. It really tests your writing muscles. I mean, look, first of all writing's hard. All of it is hard. I'm just saying it's a particular thing that I hadn't done before. And so it was thrilling. And when you've cracked it, there is something amazing about just how you are almost in real time as the reader of the play or an audience member, encountering it in the same breath as the people in front of you, which is very different to the time jumps that I've done before or that a lot of plays have.
It's very effective because it's very concentrated. There's an intensity about it. You're swept up in it. I think there's tension as well because there's some sense of foreboding, which you deliberately established in there. I think Sylvia, the bride, says a few times that she has a feeling that something bad's going to happen, which does create a sense that maybe something bad will happen. So yeah, that's an interesting form, I think, that definitely pays off in terms of its intensity and our engagement with it. And of course, more engaged, as you said, in the round.
Yeah, I would say it's still totally done in the round on the West End.
Yeah, so you're very close to the action. And they interact with you so that you feel like you're part of the whole wedding party, so to speak.
Yeah, Auntie Carol might be sick on you, who knows?
Yeah, I was glad I wasn't in certain seats, actually.
I can guess which one.
Yeah. I wanted to talk to you about the form as well in another respect. So I read somewhere that you've cited both Chekhov and the novelist William Faulkner as influences. And I wondered what specific inspiration you took from them in your work in this play.
Well, I'll start with Chekhov, if I can ever even finish with Chekhov. The House of Shades was a breakthrough play for me. I felt that I'd really found my voice and what I wanted to write. It was about how I wanted to have working class lives, which is not only at the level of social realist, and I'd never seen them in any other way. And that they were given a grandeur, which I would call classical, and to a heightened capacity normally associated with other people's lives, kings and queens if it's from the past, but not these people, that their lives can like stretch up as high into the heavens. And then I became a bit paralyzed because it had taken me nearly 3 years to write the play. And I do take a long time, so that's not unusual. And I just felt, even though I wanted to do another family drama, I just didn't know if I had one, if I could hear another, I don't know, 10 people in my head, if there were any more voices, if there was another story I could dig out of this terrain that I've marked out. And I realized that I had to go to Chekhov because those 4 great late plays are all family. So I went to him for courage, if that makes sense. I went to him to kind of go, well, stop being an idiot, Beth. Of course it's possible. Other writers have done it. I mean, I became obsessed. I fell deeply, deeply in love with the plays. I mean, I really lived with them intensely for a year. I slept listening to them, cook, listening to lectures. I would read his letters. And what it made me want to do, which is referencing back to what you said about State of the Nation, which I completely agree the play is, but also about how unstate of the nation it feels for what those kind of plays are normally like when they're billed like that. And I wanted to put all the politics into the texture. So guess what? You can come and watch the play and not even think about politics. That's fine. I mean, there's a reason why I get comparisons with EastEnders. I can read a national newspaper cultural critic and it's called soapy. It's all embedded in there. It's not at the front, but what it's doing is shaping people's lives profoundly. And really, I learned that because Chekhov's plays, I never understand it. First of all, when people say nothing happens, but also when people say they aren't political, it's like, oh my God, you can sense that this is a society or the collection of people, a family, on the absolute brink of change. It's like, no, the Russian Revolution isn't happening in this time. Oh my God, you can feel it. All of those plays are set underneath a giant ticking bomb. It's like under the floorboards of the house. And then occasionally somebody in that room can hear this ticking and they don't know what it is. They assume it's time. No, it's not. It's literally a bomb. And so I learned that from him. And also I learned that all of his plays are fundamentally about people dealing or not dealing with change. That's his eternal subject. And I've realized that that's mine as well. And I'm very interested in denial because change is hard. And I also feel like we are culturally in a place of denial about what we're heading towards.
Wow, there's a lot in there. I'm going to stop you for a minute because there's so much in there. We will definitely come to talk about change. Park that one for a minute. And as you say, Chekhov, of course, uses the microcosm of this one family to represent the changes that are going on in the wider world that they occupy. In his case, the decline of the Russian landowning class. And there's so many other things that I thought were in common as well. The form of the play that, you're talking about an ensemble cast of all ages. And you also very effectively, I think, in the same way, get the backstories of each of these individual characters, their defining hopes and dreams and disappointments in a balance in a way. There's no central protagonist as such. The couple at the center, Sylvia and Marek, it's their wedding, but they don't necessarily dominate the whole play.
In a way that you would expect. But Chekhov does teach you that. He does teach you how to give every single character its moment in the light.
Yes, exactly.
Which is beautiful because that's life as well, isn't it?
Yes. Now, I mentioned Faulkner. What about him? How does he come into this?
Yeah, so he came actually before Chekhov. And people do sort of look at me a little bit strange when I reference him because he doesn't seem anything like me at all. Obviously, he's American and a genius. So, there's those two things. But he is also another one where the great novels are a family. They're all set in his home county. Like Brian Friel, he created a mythical county, but is essentially the place where he is from, Oxford, Mississippi. And he gave me this language for this postage stamp of a place that he literally, that's the size of the terrain he's going for, but he's just digging down into it deeper and deeper. The book that I read that just changed my life was As I Lay Dying. It's the first time I'd ever read something which was modernist and completely astonishing and formally bold and poetic and extremely challenging, and all done in the voice and the mentality of a peasant class of people. I've read a ton of modernist literature and I hadn't read that. It's always a different class of people. I'm not suggesting, by the way, that he is the only person that's ever done it. What it did, it opened up a door in my mind that helped me on the path of being able to write with my voice in my place, not my family, but my people, and be excited and thrilled by that and sense its absolute potential and not confine it to what instantly came into my mind.
It is definitely about the universal and the local, isn't it? Because these are very specific locales.
Yeah, and he's immensely interested in mystery, as am I. So is O'Neill as well. He's immensely interested in fire and rain and life's forces upon people. And again, his great subject is change. Obviously, he's dealing it with the South and race and conflict and plantation and the horrors of the South and coming to terms with it, or not, as the case may be.
So your equivalent setting is the mining country of Nottinghamshire, which is where you're from.
Yes.
And it must thrill you then, in a way, to see the play you've written and the community you're writing about, this working class community, on the West End stage. Not even just the West End stage, a rather grand Royal Haymarket.
I know. The theatre itself looks like a huge wedding cake, doesn't it?
Yeah. This is great. It reached a huge audience and they absolutely loved it. It's great that this traditionally underrepresented is finding some home there.
Yeah, I find it extraordinary still.
Okay. For those who do not get a chance to see the show, could you give listeners an introduction to the main characters and a very brief synopsis of what unfolds over the course of these wedding festivities? Now, I'm bound to issue the usual spoiler alert at this point, so if you're planning to see the show, which I recommend, you may want to turn off now and come back later, but we are going to plow on, and there may be some spoilers along the way. But let's start with, who are these main characters, Beth?
Yes, I would say really it swirls around three sisters. And as you said earlier, Sylvia is the youngest, who is getting married. And then there is Maggie, who is the middle sister, who we quickly realise has been away and has returned. This is her first return to the household, to her family, for her younger sister's wedding. And then there is Hazel, the eldest sister, who is incredibly rooted where she is. There is a character called Auntie Carol, who thinks she's their mother but isn't, as the title suggests. She's their auntie. And their father, Tony, who is grieving for their dead mother. Hazel is married to John. They have 2 children. And of course, there is the groom, Marek, who is a Polish immigrant who came to the UK, moved to the area, worked, and has now got his own business as a self-employed builder. And as you already outlined at the beginning, they're getting ready, they have the whole wedding. Tensions feel there around the politics, but they eventually get through it until we realise the reason why Maggie left and has not returned is that, in fact, she is in love with her sister's husband, John, and he is in love with her. And having left to not kiss him, she kisses him, and his daughter sees the kiss and runs off. And the events spiral in a very surprising way. Even from then, I would say we don't quite expect where we are taken. But before the close of the play, Marek has been hospitalized, he's been beaten up, there's a false accusation about him, which is because of a traumatized Leanne teenage daughter having seen this kiss and desperately trying to save a situation and take attention from one thing that's about to happen to that thing that happens. But at the end of the play, so the secret does come out, and at the end of the play, everyone's life has completely changed forever.
Yes, as you can imagine, this revelation for the older sister, Hazel in particular, but for all of them.
Yeah, I knew that it had to end with something apocalyptic. I'd been very interested in apocalypse.
Really?
Yeah, and the Greek word of it means unveiling, that this thing that has been hidden must come to the fore. And often when we think of apocalypse, we just think of, zombie movies or whatever. But this end of the world, this heading to something cataclysmic. And don't forget, it's the hottest day of the year. There's a reason for that. The temperature is not accidental. Everything is going up and up and up, and we're in denial about it until it explodes. And Leanne can see where the world is going to end and tries to stop it, but ultimately cannot.
She says something about the world ending in fire, doesn't she?
Yes.
Yes, there are hints through the play that apocalyptic things may be coming. And of course, there is this secret, which we see and know that there is a real danger. Is it true? I was going to ask you earlier, is it true that you didn't know the story of the play before you started writing it?
Oh, God, no. No.
Do you start with the characters and let them take you where they will?
I wish I did. That sounds wonderful. I don't even start with a character.
How do you get to the apocalypse then?
It takes me, for a month, I might have 2 characters. And then maybe I have 3. And then at some point, Auntie Carol insists on coming into the room. And then I've got a 4th. And it builds. The thing that I start with is the container. And by the container, I mean the event which is holding the play that everything else is going to tip out of. So in this case, the wedding. So it's like a landscape almost is how I think about it. The people then come out of what the landscape of my play is. And they start to come gradually. Normally you hear obviously some people very distinctly very early on. Other times, it builds. Some people can take a very long time to emerge. And I start writing it as I go. I constantly make notes. I'm constantly questioning themes and thoughts and sentences, but I don't know where it's going to lead me. Early on in my notebook, I'd got this sentence: they're saying goodbye, but they don't know it yet. And it's one of the first notes in my notebook. Probably took me a year to actually find out why I'd written that. I'm a big believer in the fact that your subconscious, or just actually everything you've learned, sits somewhere in your head that knows more than you do in the instant of you doing it, if that makes sense. And so I write things down a lot because I start to look for patterns, because that's where my mind is leading me.
That's what we do in trying to make sense of the world.
Yeah.
I read that you dreamed a scene at the wedding, that was one of the sources.
Yeah.
Tell us about that one.
Well, I guess just tapping into what I've just said about subconscious, I do dream my plays quite a bit. In fact, I don't actually trust I've got a play until I've dreamt something significant out of it. Because that's when I realize that I have the merging of something conscious in my brain and something subconscious. And if it's subconscious, I know it's going to be amazing, if that makes sense. There's a force. It's coming out of the black wall of my mind, which means it has legs and space to grow. And one night, quite early on, I've been only working on it maybe 4 months. At this point, it was 2 sisters and a brother. I didn't even have 3 sisters. I mean, I really did not have much at all, not even 2 full scenes, bits and scraps of dialogue and notes. And I had this dream where I saw a long wedding table, a top table, if you like, in traditional sense. And I saw this moment of happiness and cheering and clapping. And I saw a bride stand up and put her 2 fingers together and stop time. And she then sat down at the table and looked at every single guest and took in what I understood was the best experience of her life, the happiest moment there could possibly be, like the apex of her experience. And then as soon as she realized that, this drop of rain fell in a glass another drop fell, and another drop. The heavens opened. I mean, it just slammed it down with rain, and all of the guests just went chaos. And then that was it. And then I woke it up and I wrote it down. And the next day, I opened my laptop and I wrote it. Of course, I didn't put any dialogue in. It just like hung there like a fragment as a stage direction. And it took me months to understand why I dreamt it, what it meant, what its significance was.
It's one of the most wondrous scenes you'll see in the theatre.
Bijan's production of that, obviously with Paulie Constable's lighting and the design and this music of Max Richter's Vivaldi Reimagined. I mean, it's sublime.
It is sublime. It's got huge import as well because she wants to stop time.
Yes.
And have that moment of her supreme happiness last forever, which, of course, is impossible.
Yeah.
That is one of the themes, as you talked about at the beginning, about change.
Yeah.
Trust the dreams, is all I would say. Can I ask you about the title of the play, Till the Stars Come Down? Where did that come from and what might it signify?
Yeah, I always title a play at the very, very end. I don't mean at the end of writing the last word. I mean after quite a few drafts. So I'll definitely be working on it for well over a year and a half before I title. And that's because I like a title, or I have come to like a title, where it's sort of like the play underneath the play. For me, I really like a title where it makes me think about what extra dimension is it. And I read this poem by Auden called Death's Echo. And it's not that I fell in love with the poem, but the end lines of this dance, dance, dance while you can, this feeling that here we are spinning on this earth at our huge lives and yet the insignificance of it, and we are just barreling into the dark, just felt stunning for me. And I knew that I wanted to, sorry, I don't want to sound presumptuous, my intention, my longing would be to be able to write something at the end that really soars up and cracks the heavens open with those three women at the end. I mean, it does in the production go full-blown Greek, and there's a reason for that.
Yeah, well, we come to the ending, and it is a wonderful poem. I looked it up. The message of which is, as you say, is a sort of invocation to dance while you can, that all good will inevitably change as everything ends in death. Dance till the stars come down from the rafters. Dance, dance, dance till you drop. Dancing, of course, is appropriate to the wedding.
Yeah, and there's quite a bit of it in the play.
Yeah, but there's a desperation in the dancing too, isn't there? To distract oneself or deny, you talk about denial, in the fervor of dancing, some underlying truth that nothing good lasts, ultimately death prevails. Yeah. It's not very cheery. Not to be born is the best for man. Dance while you can. Yes, great title though. I want to go back to the form a little bit, as you just touched on with your dream scene, because we talked about Chekhov, and you said that this is not only social realism, it's real and authentic, it feels, in those terms as well, but there are also these moments that lift it, heightened theatricality, like the scene you've just described, when Sylvia touches her fingers together and everything freezes and time stops. What were these moments about in this otherwise realistic, authentic family drama?
Yeah, on the one hand, it's like you feel like you can see every pore that they have on their face, and it's so specific culturally and really gets into that nitty-gritty. I guess it's, dare I say it, philosophical, which is to say, I feel like there are in life all of these moments that each of us experience where something piercing happens, where we all of a sudden glimpse that things happen in a different way, really, that we have a sense of greater forces, which is why there is the rain and the fire and of life's mystery. And I don't often see that when it's these lives or in realism, because it's not, like I've heard it referred to as fantasy or sci-fi, and of course it isn't. It's a treatment of the moments that we all realize the miraculousness that we are on Earth, and that something happens, and that there's these greater forces and mystery.
You talked earlier about elevating ordinary people, which, while you were talking, just made me think about Arthur Miller, because we think of that as sort of social realism. But his plays are full of these cosmic almost moments, right?
Oh, definitely. I mean, death of a salesman, I mean, completely, but also the bombast and operaticness of the Crucible.
Yeah, exactly.
There's that beautiful Strindberg quote that everything can happen, everything is possible and probable, and time and the patchwork, and that we are spinning imagination upon it. Bergman is also someone who I adore and think about. Tarkovsky is another. We watch these films, and it's like he has another language when he uses rain just dropping into these glass jars, or like the wind moving leaves and barley. And I mean, I would almost say in Tarkovsky, they're like a prayer. It's okay for me to it not be completely understandable. Again, it's part of a texture, of a fabric, of a thing that I'm creating.
Yeah, and I think it's true to say that we have moments where we sense forces, as you described it, greater than ourselves. And it may even be just patterns in our own lives
Yeah.
that we somehow recognize something significant's coming together and maybe have some inkling as to why that might be and that this was always meant to be
Yeah.
for us. Or it might be the reverse. It might be that we have a sense of we control nothing. It's also about change as well, isn't it? That nothing is constant. So her desire to keep things as they are, and of course, the background that you've set for where this takes place, this play, is a location that's been through an amazing amount of change. And this informs all of these people's lives. And there's some imagery and things that connect, I think, to this larger context where you talk about geological time, for example. There's this great speech of Tony's about geological time and the changes that epochs of time have brought to bear on the earth. For example, in this very region that created the seams of coal, and how we in the continuum of history are tiny, of course. And as he says, all this will become something else. Over time, everything changes. As the lands changed, as the social fabric they inhabit changed, as their own lives are changing.
It's beautiful, isn't it, when he has the stone and he gives it to her, the little girl that he's telling, that in that moment she's almost his little Sylvia. And he says, glass held in the hands of a bored little cave girl. So in a moment of touch, actually, you can condense time into nothing. But we've had a whole story about 450 million years of geological time. Yeah, I guess that's one of those moments of breath that we just talked about earlier on, about having the confidence to do it, earning it, bringing people with you so that they trust what you're doing. As in, they trust that if you're doing this scene is here for a reason. This little green igloo moment has a purpose, and it's a fragile one, but if you think about it, it will reveal itself. I love the moment when he holds her hair at the end. And there's been such a thing of his hands being full or being empty. And, obviously she disappears and goes.
It lends to us in the audience an extra layer, a depth that enhance what's going on for these people and the emotion or connection that we feel. We feel something bigger happening.
Oh, good.
Can we talk about the specific history of change that has happened in this area of England where they live and how that continues to inform their lives? Most significantly, the closure of the coal mines and the loss of those jobs. Could you remind us of how this came about, in particular the story of the miners' strike and its legacy, because there'll be international listeners who may be less familiar with this. But this is important to the background for these people in this play.
Yes, because where the play is set really is what would have been, in its time, pit village after pit village. So there was just tons of mines. I mean, the whole area was just full of them. And then came the miners' strike, which was, depending on your perspective, but initiated by Margaret Thatcher's government to planned closure of a huge number of pits, which would basically be decimation of these towns, because of course it was the only economy in the area. And there was a miners' strike to oppose this, so a walking out. There was a split because a lot of the miners in Nottinghamshire did not join the strike. Though it's important to say that numbers did as well, because of the way that the ballot was done, which is to say the miners were not given a ballot. And so this caused a dispute within the miners themselves. It was incredibly brutal over a year of unemployment with no benefits, with no strike pay, with no state support. It was despair, poverty, and also a collective activism, which is giving me goosebumps even thinking about it, about what these people did. They were totally and utterly demonized. It is incredibly important to say that, because these people were called by their own prime minister the enemy within. And that is women and children and men who have spent most of their lives, well, the men have spent most of their lives working underground, creating the industry that a lot of other industries depended on in the UK. It was nasty. A lot of people went to prison for absolutely nothing. It was horrific, and they lost.
Yes, it was a huge force of the state, right? Huge police presences and
Yeah. Oh, they mobilized it. And, it's so easy to forget it now, but almost every single newspaper in the country was against them.
the end result is they lost.
And pit closures followed. Some stayed open. The pit where my dad worked, so my dad was a coal miner, and he was a coal miner until 2014, which is extraordinary. There was one of 3 pits left in the country at a certain point, and he was incredibly fortunate to be in one of them. And then in the 90s, there was another round of closures of the ones that were left. Even they got shut. And it was an area which suffered huge unemployment. And at the same time as the pits closing, you also had the factories emptying as well. And, for listeners that you have in America, I mean, this is also a completely familiar picture of deindustrialization and the hemorrhaging of these places, and then what goes in to fill its place, and actually sort of nothing. Or what's gone in to fill its place is low skill. I don't want to say low skill, actually. I want to say low pay labor, because actually coal mining was well paid. You had to work overtime for it, but you could support a family, you could raise your kids, you were definitely going to have a good pension, you were protected, you could be a working class man on good money. And those kind of jobs obviously disappeared from the area.
Yeah, you just remind me, I worked in a steel factory while I was at university in the summers. And I was enormously well paid as a student there, but full-time people made a decent living. But all of that's gone too. I read there were over 200,000 jobs lost in mining. And it's really interesting to talk about what's replaced it, because I read in the program that the actual site of one of the mines near where you come from, I think, was sold in 2004 to Sports Direct for a new warehouse and distribution center.
Yes.
So what we see is one of the essential features of the modern digital economy is these big warehouse and distribution centers, where, in fact, Hazel in your play works in one of these. And these are not known for their good working conditions and pay, as I think you just suggested. And there was a great line in the program that described these fulfillment centers as not very fulfilling to work in.
So you're right. So Shirebrook Colliery Pit was just sort of left abandoned. And decades later, Sports Direct opened its headquarter warehouse. So for people who aren't familiar, that's, like an Amazon kind of thing. And what they also did was bring over actually Eastern European labour. So they would organise bank accounts for them. They would pay for their flights. They would organise accommodation. And it was a turning point from a town which had practically zero experience of immigration become a fault line for immigration. And of course, as you see in the play, marriages now happen and people are living lives and people are, getting on with it. But it has also been a flashpoint. And hence, at the time of Brexit, for example, you would have BBC News or various different outlets popping over to Shirebrook because it felt like a crucible of these issues. And they voted overwhelmingly for Brexit, over 70%.
So I didn't realize that this was orchestrated by the employers to import the labor, which prejudices, no doubt, the local workers, because Hazel in the play says she's applied to be a team leader more than once, I believe, and has been overlooked in favor of Eastern Europeans. And this, of course, influences her view and becomes sort of totemic, I suppose, in some ways, for this kind of disgruntlement about immigration, which she expresses.
Yeah.
This is very much a topical issue of our time, of course, and you personalize it in a very affecting way with Hazel's experience, and of course, made more sensitive with Marek's arrival in the family. What did you want to say about immigration and showing us the dynamic that unfolds within this family on this issue?
I don't think I had an overwhelming point to say. I think what I wanted was for an audience, and the play is obviously in London, and we are absolutely getting audiences coming to see the play that are not London audiences. People are traveling for it, but it is also overwhelmingly a London audience. And for people to sit with these lives of other people, which it can be really easy to have an opinion about without actually living with what their context is. Like, we get into money in this play. There's a lot of references to money where it's like, you were on 400 quid a week, you were. There's not many women round here on that kind of money, and you chucked it in. I want an audience to hear that. 400 a week being, wow, you're a woman and you're on that. That's really good money. Because for a lot of people in the audience, that won't be good money at all. Or that for a wedding, they're arguing the tussle over £75 to hire the room or £45 extra. Like, it's about choices and options, which is why Hazel at the end, it's the reverse of what would normally happen in a play, where the wife pleads with the husband for him to stay. And rather than doing, I love you, or I'll kill myself, or you're everything, she takes a pause, she walks away, and then what she delivers as her monologue, her Nora speech, if you like, is actually, let me take you through the economics of what your life will be as a single man. And it's kind of shocking. I personally still find it when I listen to it, because it's devastating, because it's about having no options. And she paints from where he is now all the way down to where he'll be in a bedsit above a pub with a kettle, making pot noodles, and probably being an alcoholic and looking like the lost boys that are full in that area.
It is brutal. And because, as you say about money, she and John has lost his job, is out of work. So they have no money. And she worries at the wedding, for example, if he's buying a drink for anyone. It's that acute. So we understand Hazel's perspective.
Yeah.
It's wrapped up, of course, in a more general political disaffection, as we know, with the decline economically. It's obviously not all attributable to immigration. The cost of living crisis, the deindustrialization, all these big forces.
Yes. Sometimes it's about the thing that's in front of you that's easiest to identify, as opposed to multiple narratives. It's like just the narrative straight in front of you. But I didn't want to make a point, and maybe I should, but I'm increasingly not interested in that in theatre, which is to say, I'm interested in other playwrights doing that, but for my own work, I'm just interested in an audience sitting with and living with people.
I think the great strength is that you're not making political points. It's the human reality that we see. And we see two sides of the human reality, actually, as well, in a sense, because we see prejudice and bigotry on the part of Hazel and Auntie Carol. However, they have also some cause for being unhappy or angry, and where they direct that anger may not be appropriate, but this is the reality. And I think they're just showing that the pressures that people are under. And let's talk about the other side, so to speak, in the character of Marek, where, he is an individual as well. He's not just a statistic about how many immigrants there are, and he's another human being. And he has made his way through hard work. He came to the UK on a megabus, arrived with only £60 in his pocket. I love those details that you get this whole background where he's done shit jobs which he says local people just won't do. And there's some of that truth, I suppose. And now he is building his own business. So he's done all right. And then again, there's a point where he might step over the line and get a bit preachy about this, that everyone else is lazy, and Hazel pushes back, that she and John have also worked hard all their lives. It's not black and white, but it gets very touchy. He thinks in being helpful, he offers John a job, who has no job and they have no money. And Hazel turns it down flat. He don't want the job. When they desperately need it, and says under her breath, loudly enough for him to hear, they give us jobs now, do they? To which Marek responds, I think, with one of the most striking lines in the play, you need to decide if you are a victim or superior, because you can't be both. And that's another wonderful summary of a theme that's running through our politics today as well, and the attitudes to this.
Yeah.
There's truth on all sides, maybe. It's interesting what we think about the future, because Hazel's youngest daughter, Sarah, still on this issue, recounts an incident from school where a girl from Lithuania is at her school and her dad was told to fuck off back.
Yeah.
And so you get a sense of that kind of anger out there. And yet there are new generations living here.
Yeah. Sylvia and Marek will be having a baby, and that child will, and he tells the story of the other kid at school that's been picked to be head boy by other children, not by teachers.
Yeah, so he says today there are still problems, but in future, like this boy, a generation from now will all be different. Will it? One can only hope. It's another example of change, maybe. How does change happen? Let's talk a bit more about some of these characters in a little bit of detail. We mentioned at the beginning that it's a beautifully balanced ensemble piece, but there is also a sense that the play is dominated by the women, especially the three sisters.
Yeah.
Did you set out to put the women and their experience and perspective at the center of the play?
Yeah, I've just fallen in love with women, really.
Quite right.
In The House of Shades, the first character I heard in that play was Constance, and I fell in love with her. And I felt something changing me. I felt that I had untapped within me this craving, desire to write women. And I have to say, women who are full on, completely comfortable being aggressive, with an energy of attack that is not what I often see as presentations of women on stage. And they dominate and they eat it up. I mean, Auntie Carol is just magisterial, which is to say the actresses who have played her and given her life.
She is clearly a force of nature, as you say, but the women generally seem to dominate the airspace and the relationships.
Which I find that quite truthful to my area, I have to say, and maybe it is just literally I'm talking about my own family, but I've got a lot of aunties and cousins, and yeah, the women, and maybe that is to do with deindustrialization and a fact of obviously the change there in the dynamics of men being breadwinners and earning more and knowing their identity, having a very specific identity, that actually their identity is not that anymore. And I don't even know if they have one or what that is. Whereas the women seem to burst forward.
Actually, I want to come to Auntie Carol in a minute, but let's start with Sylvia, whose wedding it is, and in some ways the central play, but she's quite a quiet presence a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And unlike, as you're saying, the aggression of the others, she's sweet and loving. She and Marek, I think, are very much in love, which is very good to see at the center of the play. Is heartening. A lot of other things are disheartening, but that is heartening. But she's also had her trials. She's been at home looking after her father. She was hit hard by her mother's death, and there are suggestions that she's been emotionally fragile. But she also has some steel as well, doesn't she?
Well, she finds it. Yes, she is one of the characters that goes on such a huge transformation. So in terms of a play about change, I mean, the change in her is by the final act. So I'm literally talking about the last 20 minutes. She just walks in like an absolute hurricane and kind of is ready to burn the house down and takes every single one of them out. And you almost feel like, oh, so this is going to be the ending of the play, if you like, because you don't realize, oh my God, no, there's something that she doesn't know. But, there's another ending.
Yeah, because they've attacked Marek.
They've attacked Marek, who is in hospital and was unconscious.
So she's finally coming to his defense. Earlier in the play, he accuses her of not standing up when they have jibes at him about immigration. But they've gone too far, and she fights back and stands up against them. And issues them, as you say, which could have been the finale, an ultimatum to the family. Either you accept him or you lose me.
Yeah. She talks about the mother, when the mother's ill, and she's like, I knew something was wrong. You realize that the mother obviously had a late diagnosis of cancer, and at that point nothing could have been done, etc. I knew something was wrong. I saw her in pain, but we all just continued as if everything was fine. She talks about the weight of this thing pressing down on her. It's alluded to, I don't want to prescribe, but it's alluded to about depression. And this man has come into her life and It's the most beautiful and happiest she's ever been in her life, and she almost can't believe it. She cannot believe that this happiness can sustain, and obviously, in fact, it doesn't.
Although I think their relationship will, if I might hazard anything.
Yes, but, if your whole family is destroyed, that's a lot to live with.
Yeah. Can we talk about Hazel?
Yeah.
At first, I think you might not like Hazel much. We've talked a bit about her prejudice, and she's shrill and a bit overbearing, somewhat snide with her sisters and stroppy with her daughters, certainly. But I think you have to feel for her. She has a lot to contend with her job, as we mentioned, having no money, and it turns out her marriage. It's no wonder she's stressed and unhappy, isn't it?
Yeah. Although, sorry, I just want to respond to something you said about overbearing and shrill. I mean, to me, she's so normal, it's insane. Like, wow, you think that's shrill? You think that's overbearing? The identification is hard.
She's slightly controlling, maybe.
No, but I just mean it's so normal to me. But yes, I can completely understand that. No, I just don't want to describe her as that as myself. That's all I'm saying. But I'm completely comfortable for somebody else to say that.
Okay, forgive me.
Yes, she is desperate to hold on to everything as it is. She's very stuck. She's very in denial. She is closing her eyes at one point when you almost think the husband is going to confess to loving the sister. You think it's just at this point. But he does say to her, "Why do you refuse to see what's in front of you?" And she does refuse to see what is in front of her, whether it's his deadness to her and what must have been obvious about his growing attraction and desire and love for her sister, whether it's the changing community because the community has to change. All of these things that she is so scared that she is holding on and shutting down everything for dear life. I mean, I love Hazel so much because I think it's exhausting to be that woman, to hold that house together, to deal with, Sylvia's emotions and the fragility and hold that up. She'll be the one that's doing her dad's grocery orders every week, that's cleaning his bath out every week, that's doing this, that's doing that, that's got a full-time job, that's got a teenage daughter that hates her,
No. As I say, she's got a lot to contend with. But it's interesting about closing her eyes. She's also somehow determined to fight for it as well, that they can get through this, what she calls bad patch. But
yeah.
It's pretty grim. The marriage is pretty bad place.
Yeah.
And I think one of the most heartbreaking moments is when she says to her husband, who won't make love to her, "Do you know how hurtful it is? How humiliating it is to be with a man who won't make love to me." That word humiliating just pierces you. And possibly even worse, when he says he's tried. And she says, "You don't think I already knew that I didn't feel it was an effort for you even before you stopped?" That is just brutal.
Yeah.
You have to forgive her quite a lot, actually.
Yeah. Yeah.
What about Maggie? Is she the villain of the piece, falling for her sister's husband?
Oh my goodness, no.
It's a very bad move.
It really is. But I mean, when the confrontation happens with Hazel, her sister, and it's all come out, which obviously Maggie hasn't confessed to it, it's been forced out into the open. When she says, "I left everything I had, I went away." I mean, she moved away. And, maybe for some listeners, that's no big deal. This is a big deal to move away. People don't leave. People stay in this family, they stay in this town, whether it's the best thing or not. It's very hard to imagine doing something differently. And she left everything she had because she thought, "I am going to make the biggest mistake of my life." She says, "I'm scared."
Yes.
This is a woman who is scared of herself. And she's scared of herself because she knows herself. She knows she's grabby Maggie. She knows she can't put herself in the place where it's within reach, because if it's within reach, she'll grab. And I've got respect for the girl. She left. But that's the problem with a family wedding. It brings you back, doesn't it?
Yeah, quite right. And it's interesting you saying that she knows herself that she would grab what she wants, because her father says that about her. That's what she's like. In fact, she's been married 4 times, which suggests that she grabs what she wants and may not always be the most sensible or right thing to do. But there's also an interesting vein where she thinks that this could be the real thing, which makes it doubly hard, because she has a conversation with her father where she asks him, "Is there one true love in life?" He says he's had his one true love, and she despairs at the prospect of not having it. How does a person live the rest of their days without it? But she also knows that it is impossible too. She talks about dreaming about them being together and realizes that in her dreams, she can't see the rest of the family because they couldn't actually accommodate that. That's not possible. These are incompatible outcomes, that she can still be part of this family and be with John. That's just not possible. So she does understand that and tries to leave, but gets sucked back. John is insistent. So what would she do? If it hadn't come out, was she going to...
I feel when she says we're done here, we're done. And Carol has said to her beforehand about you need to leave, and kind of basically tells her, yeah, sometimes you fall in love with someone and actually that will stay with you for the rest of your life. But guess what? Your family is the most important thing. I mean, I'm paraphrasing. You know, you can know that your family is the most important thing, or you can know that it's incompatible for you to be together. But sometimes the penny drops. Even if intellectually you know it, you actually feel it in your heart. Something goes stone cold and you realize, oh, this is it. I believe her when she says we're done. She's going to get on that train and go.
That's a great reading. And you're right, Auntie Carol warns her off because Auntie Carol understands it because, as it turns out, Auntie Carol knows what it's like to love someone else you can't have because she has actually had something for Tony, her best friend's husband, all her life. She missed the opportunity when they were young to be together, and she has some regret about that. But she's held it in and realizes the family's more important. But which is interesting given the character she is, because she is full on. I mean, what a triumph of a character she is. Funny, outspoken, crude, bullshit, bigoted to some degree. She just is the center of attention all of the time. And yet, you know, there's this smartness about her, isn't there? I mean, she intuits what's going on with Maggie.
Yeah, when the others don't.
She's intelligent.
You can be hilarious and hysterical and intelligent.
Yes. Clearly you can, and she is. But she's also had her sadnesses. We talked about she has this thing for Tony, and that hasn't come off. And underneath her bravura, she's also sort of needy. She needs this family too, doesn't she? She wants to be at the heart of it.
Yeah.
There with the girls on the wedding morning and at the top table, for example.
Inserts herself.
So yeah, she needs this family too. And is desperate when it looks like it's all going to fall apart. Hazel shouts at her, tells her to get out of the house, and she never wants to see her face again. And she pleads with her, I love you like a daughter. I want to stay. Let me. It's sort of poignant.
But it's two things in the same moment, isn't it? I mean, I don't know what night you saw it on, because she does. She pleads. She goes, you know, I want to stay. And actually the whole auditorium laughs.
Oh, yes.
Which is such an interesting, I love the emotional swings where you can go so far one way and then 30 seconds later go so far the other. I mean, to me, that is truthful. That's how we step through life, isn't it?
Yes. It's a beautiful moment for an actor as well, that, because, as you said earlier, she insists on coming in. So she wants to be in the room and is always there. Seemingly through the whole play, she's coming in and going out and coming in, constant presence, but actually then realizes how fragile her entitlement to that is at that moment, I guess.
Yeah.
And that she might not be allowed to stay in the room. In fact, isn't going to be allowed to stay in the room, which is very painful. Let's talk briefly about the men. Can only be brief now. Let's start with John, married to Hazel. You do feel for his despair as well, with no job, a job he didn't want anyway, and little prospect now. And you can understand his profound wish for a fresh start, as he says. But he is miserable to his wife, and Maggie, clearly not a sane way forward. God knows what his way should be. Yeah, what should he be doing?
Oh, God. Well, I don't want to say what he should be doing, but I certainly feel for him. He's obviously, I mean, the two of them, they talk. He has his aspirations. You know, they talk about nature. He's watched fireflies. He's able to have a conversation with her about it.
When he was young, he drew. He wanted to be an artist. So there's a sort of poetic soul there that's failed to find any outlet.
Yeah. And there's something about Maggie where there's a similarity. You know, she talks about everything sparkles and smells of green. And she talks about the rocks in Vegas and the heat and it looking like they're on fire. I mean, this is someone who also has a sensitivity to the world and a sensualness, I would say. And that's what they share.
So if Hazel weren't there, they would be a match.
Yeah, they would be a match, but she's there.
Yes, exactly. And sadly for him, because he says, I'm
Yeah.
dead inside, and I want to live. And he thinks Maggie is life. And actually, there's a line in the Auden poem that says, change your partner, dance while you can.
He's definitely read that then.
Yes, he has. I think he wanted that. But in the way of the Auden poem, I don't think it's the answer. And as you said, Hazel paints a grim picture of the reality of life after divorce. Tony and Pete are brothers. Tony is a fabulous picture of stoic detachment from the chaos of all the women around him to start with. But I think his lack of engagement also betokens a kind of deadness in him too, doesn't it?
Yeah. On one hand, he's like the static presence, like the stone that he holds, the sort of thing that's like constant. But he is also stuck. I mean, he refers to himself as having lived a recent life like a paperweight, something just heavy and grounded and immobile. Yeah, he doesn't know how to be without his wife. It's a huge loss, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a great line. I've been as still as a paperweight. But I think, interestingly, I think there's some recognition that even just saying that on his part, that it might be the first step to moving on.
For sure. And that is what propels, if you like, this change that he has. There's this wonderful role playing of being Tarzan. And actually, it's the first time you see him be transformed. And that transformation of the Tarzan and the playfulness, everyone thinks it's going to lead to something else. What it leads to is a transformation with the brother, who he's not spoken to since the miners' strike when Tony crossed the line. And the transformation is one where all of a sudden he realizes that actually that him and his brother should speak.
Yes. So I think there's some sense that he can move on, that change can happen. I mean, Sylvia's going to move out of the house and he'll have to look after himself. But yeah, he's happy to take the initiative to bury the hatchet with Pete. Although Pete rebuffs it, it's a terrible legacy, that division, and extraordinary how long it lasts. Let's talk about the ending of the play. And again, I have to say we may give away some spoilers here, but suffice to say that Maggie and John's secret comes out with a devastating impact on Hazel in particular, but also on the whole family. In the last scene of the play, the three sisters are left alone trying to process what has happened. It's hard to see how they can come back from this, isn't it?
Yes. Before the interval, Leanne has a vision of the end of the world. Rather, her mind is only able to process the end of the world because she has just literally seen the end of the world with her dad and her auntie kissing. And looking at this rising lantern that the wedding couple have set that's on going up into the air, she sees the whole world on fire. And she says, fire, that's how it'll end. And I knew that the play would end with the end of the world. And the end of the world would be the end of the sisters' world. And the end of this family.
So there is no future for them.
No.
It's not just the bonds between the sisters that we ruptured either. Everyone in the family will suffer, of course.
Yeah, it's very distressing when the little girl, there's a character called Sarah, who I think is 7 in the play, and she's screaming. I mean, everyone's it's one of those horrible family traumatic events before then it just condenses down to the three sisters alone, arguing it out and bearing their souls to each other.
Yeah, it's devastation for all of them. And it's interesting, the breach, of course, between the sisters is a repeat of the rupture of the previous generation between the brothers.
Yeah.
And it's almost more devastating because Hazel says to Maggie, you should know that I loved you even more than I loved him, than her husband.
Yeah.
And she says, this is the last time the three of us will ever be in a room together. It's brutal. It seems we can't help making a mess of things. Deep down desires that we failed to deny. Hazel says this about Maggie, you couldn't resist, you thought you could have it all. And Auden, again, going back to his poem, the desires of the heart are as crooked as corkscrews. Yes.
I mean, those end 6 pages, let's say, have got a complete momentum of their own. In rehearsal, every now and then the director would say, you don't have to reach there today, we're just going to run this bit. And every single time, the actors couldn't help it. You can't do that scene and not do that scene. If you commit to the rhythm of it, it's like being caught up in a whirlwind. It has a gravitational force, if you like. Obviously, the actors are absolutely extraordinary. And Lucy Black is the actress who gives us that end moment where when Maggie asks her what she wants, she'll do anything. And she refers back to a previous image that she had, which is, I want to drive past the wreck. And it's this car wreck. To imagine that it hasn't happened. Again, we have this recurrence of denial. I want to dance while we can. And yeah.
I don't want this future. I want to go back to everything how it was. As you say, dance while she can. It's no longer possible now to ignore what's coming, the death, so to speak, of the family. Wow. Thank you so much, Beth. That's been brilliant.
Thanks for reading the play so closely.
Well, I loved it.
Sometimes it's just really nice to get stuck in. So thank you for getting stuck in.
Thank you. That's great. I love doing it. Before I let you go, one of the traditions of the podcast, I like to ask my guests to recommend another play that we could do on the podcast if we haven't already done, but one that's just a personal favorite. Now, looking at your bookshelves behind you, I bet there are thousands you could choose from here, but could you just name one play that you love?
There are tons, but I'm going to choose a debut play, actually, which is Ava Pickett's 1536. I just thought it's such a wonderful, striking, really promising debut play.
So this just ran at the Almeida, right? And it's 1536 means it's about Anne Boleyn and...
Exactly, but from the perspective of 3 servants who live in the middle of nowhere in Essex, getting the news 5 days later, if you like.
Ah, fascinating. So again, not about the kings and queens necessarily. Well, that's a good choice. Thank you very much. So, Till the Stars Come Down continues at the Theatre Royal Haymarket until the 27th of September. I can't recommend it enough. As the curtain falls on the 3 sisters dancing while they can to defer their tragedy, Hazel cries, "We can't ever go back. They cannot ever be what they were before. Will they ever come together again? Perhaps time will lessen the hurt and they will find a way to let go and forgive. Because after all, as Tony says, over time, everything changes." Thanks for listening. See you next time. There are additional footnotes about this and every other play that we cover in the podcast available to our patrons. Patrons also enjoy early access to our sister podcast, The Play Review, in which Jody Rylett and I share our views on current productions on the London stage. To become a patron, please visit our website at theplaypodcast.com. And don't forget to follow us wherever you listen to podcasts so as not to miss an episode. Thank you again for listening. See you next time.